Okay, you mentioned this. History was made last month. The Africa region was declared free of the wild polio virus, proving polio can be eradicated from the world. Five regions of the WHO are now polio free. There's 6 regions and 5 are now polio free. And this was accomplished with the help of your donations and donations from other Rotarians around the world. In fact, Rotarians donated $890 million to eradicate polio from Africa. 220 million children were vaccinated multiple times every year. And 1.8 million cases of polio were averted, and we saved 180,000 lives. Now, how many doses needed to be given out since 1996 when it all first started in Africa? 9 billion oral vaccine doses were provided by 2 million volunteer vaccinators. In 1996, that's the year the African heads of states signed a commitment to end polio in Africa. That year, 75,000 children across Africa had polio, but there's been no polio since 2016 in Africa. Now, our current president, Holger Knock, said of this, challenges are formidable, and that's why we must recognize great achievements and commend all the people who played important roles in reaching this milestone. It took tremendous effort over many years. But in spite of these challenges, Rotarians kept pushing forward, and now history is being made. Nothing stops Rotarians. Next slide. Okay, this is Mr. Blessings from Malawi. Mike and I have been to Malawi 5 times, and he contracted polio at birth. And you see, he walked with sandals on his hands. But this will never occur because polio is wiped out from Africa. And once again, these poor children, they became crawlers because of polio. Never again. We wiped it out of Africa. Now, as was mentioned, there are many challenges to eradication, and they are immense. For instance, due to poverty and unsanitary conditions, that can help spread the virus. Plus, just getting to the children is difficult with bad roads and rough terrain. As you can see, water is a big challenge. Places with unsafe water can contain fecal matter that can enter the drinking, that can spread the virus. And it's gets into the drinking water supply, and then the virus is spread from person to person. It's extremely contagious. Anything contaminated with feces and put in your mouth can give you polio. As you see, this little boy was about to drink that water. It can spread to another person immediately before and about 1 to 2 weeks after symptoms appear. And the virus can live in an infected person's feces for many weeks. And then whenever they defecate outside near a water source, it gets into the water supply. People who don't have symptoms, now this sounds familiar because it's like COVID, people who don't have symptoms can pass the virus to others and make them sick, even though they don't have symptoms. This here is another village water source, a very dirty water source. But in spite of all these challenges, we continue to persevere. And the population has to be sufficiently immunized at a high rate in order to kill polio from the environment. It has to be like 90% or above. Okay, just a few polio facts. It's an ancient disease. This slab shows somebody who had polio in 1580 BC. It's an intestinal virus. There's 3 types of viruses. Type 1 is still circulating in Afghanistan and Pakistan. It can cause paralysis, of course, and children under 5 are the most vulnerable. There's no cure, like COVID, prevented by vaccine. There were 2 vaccines, Jonas Salk, who developed the shot, and Albert Sabin, which is given now, the oral vaccine. And each child needs 3 doses. Now, polio in the US. We've only been polio-free since 1979. Not very long, really. In 1952, there were 58,000 cases. And back then, as some of you may remember, and just like COVID today, there was panic and fear. Families were quarantined, public places were closed. I mean, just like today, we're experiencing a lot of anxiety and fear. And back then too, there was a rush for a vaccine in the early 1950s. There's a new polio vaccine coming out. It's in trial right now, and it's supposed to be more stable and more effective than the Sabin oral vaccine. So hopefully that'll come out soon, we hope. Now, these 2 gentlemen, past Rotary International presidents, Clem Renouf and James BOMAR, they were instrumental in getting polio eradication off the ground. Polio eradication was started about 40 years ago. Rotarians like these 2 dared to take a risk and dream really big. They wanted to make a huge impact in the world, not just in their own local communities. Now, President Renouf was president 1978-79. Before he was president, he went on a trip to India and Africa, and he saw the horrible conditions which affected him very deeply. He was really moved by those conditions. He came home and said he couldn't imagine spending a year doing little things when there are huge problems to be met. He read how smallpox had been eradicated and wanted to do something big on that scale. And he asked the question, why can't we do that? So up to this point, though, there was no organized worldwide Rotarian project. Every club was doing its own thing. But long story short, after consultations and discussions with various people, they were advised to tackle polio because of the ease of getting the vaccine, and anybody could give the vaccine. You didn't have to be a medical person. So in 1979, James BOMAR and others went to the Philippines to do a test run of immunizing 6 million children on a $750,000 grant. Seems like pennies today, doesn't it? After success of this program, they wanted to give the vaccine to all children of the world by 2005. And Rotary had asked the WHO for help, but the WHO declined because they thought we were amateurs. Well, we were, and even the leadership later realized how naive they were, and they admitted that they had no idea of the magnitude of this project and what they were getting into. But they persevered and they kept going. And for instance, they were advised to in order to just get all the children of the world vaccinated by 2005, just to start, you need to immunize at least 500 million children at a cost of $100 million. Well, they were astounded. So, but in 1985, Polio Plus was started, and they were going to try and raise $120 million to get that off the ground. They had never raised that kind of money before in Rotary. Well, at the 1988 convention, it was announced nearly $250 million was raised for Polio Plus. So they had doubled it. Well, the WHO took notice. And now in 1988, the GPEI was formed. We have partners. That's the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. UNICEF gets the vaccine. CDC hunts for the virus. WHO directs the strategy. Rotary raises the funds and gets the volunteers. And Gates matches our donations 2-to-1 right now, up to $50 million each year. So, but there's another partner that has just joined. It's Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. It's a public-private partnership whose goal is to increase equitable use of vaccines in lower income countries. They have just joined. Well, here's that slide. Okay, now Mike and I have had the opportunity to give those drops in Malawi a couple times during a couple trips. But overall, Rotary's investment has been, Rotarians have spent $2.1 billion to get this done. Over 1 million volunteers. Globally, with our partners, 20 million volunteers, 3 billion children vaccinated, over an $18 billion cost. But District 6510 Rotarians are very generous. Not everybody can go give drops, but they can donate. And since 2009, Rotarians at District 6510 have given enough to provide over 4 million immunizations. So thank you, District 6510. Now, we are winning this battle. It's tough, but we're winning it. These are some other Rotarians that some of you may know that have given drops over in Africa. 19 million people are walking today because of those drops. 650,000 paralytic cases are prevented every year, and there's 1.5 million people alive today because of it. And polio has been eradicated. 99.9% polio is eradicated. We're just so close, but the last little bit's the toughest. So where are we at now? Well, the job still isn't done. Through September 9th, there's still 2 endemic countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan. There's a total of 102 cases. And that was as of, September 9th. So, but last year, the total was 176 all year. What happened was vaccinations had to be postponed when the pandemic hit. And they've just since, I don't know, a month ago or so, they've restarted vaccinating. So this is Pakistan, just some pictures from Pakistan, and there's a lot of challenges. Afghanistan could have the same pictures, but I picked Pakistan. If you see on the bottom, security is a big issue. There have been vaccinators murdered just for going out to vaccinate against polio. They still go out. They're really brave people. And some of those other challenges, 60% of the people live in remote areas, and over 50,000 cross unchecked crossings every day. So reaching those children is really difficult. There's war and conflict, illiteracy, misinformation, negative propaganda, travel, it's a plane ride away. There's complacency. Governments become complacent about giving the vaccine. Now, what can we do? Well, World Polio Day is coming up October 24th. Clubs all over the world bring awareness to polio eradication on that day, and they also raise funds for the effort, for the cause. Still have to immunize until it is no longer in the environment. Over 400 million children a year need to be immunized yet, and it takes millions of dollars. And we must keep up the immunizations to keep it from returning, and to keep it and to eliminate it from the environment forever. So we can't stop. So what is District 6510 going to do? Well, in commemoration of World Polio Day, we're doing the 3rd annual matching points for polio. We're having 25,000 matching points. They will count, this will count towards your Paul Harris Fellow. Personal donations, it must be personal donations, $100 minimum, $500 maximum, and it starts October 12th and ends October 31st. So your $100 will turn into $300 with the Gates match, or you'll be impacting the lives of 500 children for $100. Or for the $500, you will get your Paul Harris Fellow, and you'll be impacting 2,500 children. So Anyway, World Polio Day ideas. Everything has to be virtual these days. Virtual fundraiser held during a mealtime. Can have a polio survivor speak or a foundation representative. Ask attendees to donate, oh, that's misspelled there. Ask attendees to donate the meal cost. Purple Donuts in Tennessee, they have a fundraiser where they had Dunkin' Donuts paint the tip of Long John purple. And they sell those purple donuts. It's a big fundraiser in Tennessee. And then pennies for polio, just a few of the ideas. Now, what can you do? What can you also do? Well, you can learn more about it at these websites, endpolio.org or polioeradication.org. That's the GPEI site. Has a lot of information. And bring awareness, use social media, local media. But I asked you to be a part of this fight, as you did last year, to save children's lives. Donations are needed for those 2 drops to wipe it from the earth. We can't stop now. Rotarians started this dream of a polio-free world 40 years ago, and they have not let the challenges stop them from achieving the dream of saving all the children of the world from polio. Now, Holger Nack has also said, this is a big step in our journey to a polio-free world, but the fight isn't over yet. We still need the support of our Rotary members, donors, and heroic effort of healthcare workers to finish the job. Every child deserves to live a polio-free life. Oh, and I have just a couple, do I have time to play this video? It's just a couple minutes.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. It's in Pakistan.
बच्चों को पोलिया कतरा पिलाओ, 2-2 कतरा पिलाओ, बच्चों को हिफाजत करो, सफाई करो, संभालो।
The good news from Pakistan is we're on our way. We're only a few more cases away to be 0, and then we're going to maintain 0 cases for 3 years, and Pakistan will be polio free.
We assure the international community that Rotarians will not give up. We will accomplish our mission. So we want to give a whole message that we want to have a healthy Pakistan, an educated Pakistan, which will bring a brighter future to Pakistan.
Now that was a little bit dated, but I just thought it was a good video to show the conditions of, I can stop share, conditions of they have to, face when giving the polio drops. So they're more than a few cases away from being zero now, but they're at it with a vengeance again. So any questions?
Mary Jo,
Yeah,
on the 25,000 point match,
yeah.
do you know if $500 of the Paul Harris Society donation can go into this if it's done during
Well,
that period?
it has to be, no, you have to give a new check. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, if you're doing your donation at that time, or it has to be something separate from the Paul Harris Society
it
donation?
counts for Paul Harris Society, are you saying? Yeah,
Yeah, if you make your contribution in the October period,
yeah,
can 500 of that go for the match?
yeah.
Or should I just wait and ask
No, it counts.
Lenny? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
It only counts for the amount of the donation, not the match.
Oh, yeah, yeah, your Paul Harris Society, Mike was saying, he's in the background here. He's saying,
Okay.
yeah, your $500 will count for the society, but not the matching points. You know what I mean?
It'll, in other words, $500 will count towards your
Yeah,
$1,000 commitment for the Paul Harris Society.
but not the points.
Right.
The points will count towards your Paul Harris, but not the Paul Harris Society.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Good. Thank you.
Population guru in the zones. Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to be sending out an email later this week, in a few days, about the details of how to donate. And one thing, do not send any money to Rotary International directly. I will give you an address in the email where to send it, because we have to know. Otherwise, it's going to be too hard to match points we won't, if you send it to RI, can't keep track of it. So you send it to the address, it would be Lanny, and he will send it off to RI after we count. So, yeah.
I have a question. That seems like I can't even imagine how in a country like Pakistan, for example, that the movement is organized to immunize all the children in the country. How do they do that? It seems like logistically it would just be an overwhelming challenge to try to reach out to every child in the country and then be satisfied that every child has been administered to.
Yeah, well, they go to the train stations, bus depots, they set up permanent stations at transit areas. And I know when they cross over the mountains, they just keep, using millions of volunteers and thousands of volunteers, and it's tough, but they just keep going at it over and over again. So
May I add to that a little bit? The idea of the house to house.
Yeah,
The health workers at every single health center have to draw up a micro plan of everywhere that a person lives, even if it's under a tree or in a store or a regular house, whatever. And that plan is put in place first so that each health center, and in those areas like Pakistan, Afghanistan, most of India, Asia, has health centers designated for where people live. There's a geographic area surrounding it. So there's a lot of work that goes on with that, so that you go to every house, and then you do pick up the other people who are in transit at the train stations, crossing the border, one thing or another. It's not easy, but they've been working at it for quite a while.
Yeah,
now.
see, yeah, and
So
the I was gonna say yeah, because of COVID, the house to house was stopped for a few months. So
Right.
there are cases that increased because of it, but they're back at it, I understand. But they got to deal with COVID too. They got to be careful, so. But they're back vaccinating. Thank goodness. They said worldwide, if vaccination stopped, we could have 200,000 cases in 10 years. So.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Hearing no additional questions, I want to say thank you, Mary Jo, for joining us today and for being our speaker. It's great to have visiting Rotarians share what they're more knowledgeable about than I am, and most of us are. So I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure many of our other Rotarians did as well. So thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you for having me. See you, everybody.
I'm going to go back to sharing my screen as we wrap up our agenda here today. What's happening next week? We have Brad Austin joining, or our very own Brad Austin will be doing a presentation on electric vehicles. And then on the 30th, we have Dorsey Prosser of the League of Women Voters to discuss early and mail-in voting and the proposed amendment. And on October 7th, we have Chancellor Austin Lane of SIU will be joining us. And now it's time for the four-way test. Jerry Malumbi, could you please lead us in the four-way test?
I sure will. The four-way test of what we think, say, or do. First,
Is it the truth?
is it the truth? Second,
Is it fair
is
to
it
all
fair
concerned?
to all concerned?
Concern.
Third,
Will it build
goodwill and better friendships. And fourth,
Will it
will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you all for joining us this week and at the Rotary Club of Carbondale, and we'll see you next week.
Right.
As always, here's our links. Check us out on our website, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Okay. Goodbye.
Meeting is
Goodbye.